Afternoon, and thank you, Kelvin. It's delightful to be here today. And from my standpoint, having a panel of 4 PhDs talking about AI, and then following him, some dude talking about GPOs. But anyway, hopefully this will be educational for you and interesting as well. How many of you are familiar with GPOs and have worked with one before? I can't see real well, but I don't see too many hands, so this may be helpful for you. GPOs in their basic sense have been described early on as an organization or organizations that aggregate volume of the customers they serve, providers. And with aggregating that volume, negotiating preferential pricing for their customers, hospitals, surgery centers, et cetera. Now there's another component of it as well. I just didn't change one letter in the word. Many times I've been told that GPOs aggravate suppliers. And I see a few heads being nodded there, but this will hopefully help from an education standpoint. But before I get into the GPO part, I want to take a little bit of a detour relative to my background. Kelvin shared with you my background. I was born and raised here in Salt Lake City, in East Mill Creek. And in fact, I went to Olympus High School, from there to the University of Utah, where I graduated in pharmacy, a couple of other degrees as well. And from there, at the same time in pharmacy school, I did my intern work at St. Mark's Hospital and was also a staff pharmacist there. From there, I went to Pioneer Valley Hospital as the director of pharmacy and also took over the materials management position for a while. From there to Intermountain Healthcare to become their director of their group purchasing program for pharmacy, which was part of Amerinet, a national group purchasing organization. And then finally, a year later, I was asked to go back to St. Louis to lead the pharmacy program for Amerinet's nationwide pharmacy program. And so that's what I've done. And in the subsequent years, I assumed the position of CEO. Then, as Kelvin indicated, in 2015, I did pick up and move to at least an apartment in Virginia and was the CEO of the Healthcare Supply Chain Association, the association that works on policy and educational issues on Capitol Hill. One of the key things that I learned on Capitol Hill was this: if you don't tell your story, someone else will, and you're probably not going to like it. So you had to be very, very diligent from the standpoint of telling your story. Now I have one more aside before I get into the GPO portion as well. And that is, in high school, and this is pretty exciting for me, in high school you meet some pretty good friends, and they stay with you for life. It just so happens that one of the friends that I met in high school and played basketball, we were on the basketball team together at Olympus High School, was Kurt Entz. He's here representing Dymatron. And Kurt and I have been friends for 55 plus years and going strong. What that means is, yikes, we're pretty old. But we do have some good experience and good background. So I'm pleased to recognize Kurt as a good, lifelong best friend. And I'm glad I'm here because what he's asked me many times before was, hey Todd, what do you do? What's this group purchasing thing? Well, Kurt, now you'll understand a little bit about what I do. So let's talk about group purchasing organizations. First, you have to understand that it's a very competitive business that you're in, not only from the group purchasing standpoint, from the supplier perspective, as well as the hospital's perspective. They do want to make sure that they're getting the best value that they possibly can get. It's important to them. And in fact, if you continue to watch the literature now, just today, in modern healthcare, they indicated that many healthcare facilities are trying to streamline their med tech suppliers so that it's less expensive for them to do what they do. And all the time you're reading about hospital margins and the concerns from hospitals about their margins. So they're always taking a look at what they can do to reduce prices. So it's extremely important to understand you're in an industry that's extremely competitive. Now, the other important thing is it's very helpful, and I'm not going to say it's great, but it's very helpful that you're here to understand about how group purchasing works. Group purchasing is involved in much of the supply chain throughout the United States, not only for hospitals, but the non-acute care arena as well. And we'll talk about that in just a few moments. So good for you for being here. The ultimate mission that I want to talk about from the standpoint of group purchasing organizations is this. Their goal is to make sure that they provide high-quality products and services to enable their customers to treat the patients with high-quality health care. That's very important for them. Every contract team that I'm aware of in the group purchasing arena, they come from, those contract managers come from the provider arena. They are clinicians. They have worked with patients and with nurses and clinicians before. And their goal is to provide high-quality health care. That's important to understand. But my goal for this particular discussion is to talk about, very briefly, the GPO market overview. And you're going to ask the question, well, geez, Todd, how much do you know about group purchasing and the total marketplace? There's a lot that I don't know because there's a lot that we don't know. We're going to talk about the provider market overview, working with or without a GPO. In a lot of the new technologies, such as I'm hearing about through this conference, there may be situations where you say, a GPO isn't what I need to work with. If you have a product that is so unique and so differentiated in the marketplace, you have to ask the question, do you need a GPO or not? There are some advantages for using a GPO, but there are some advantages for not using a GPO when your product is so differentiated. However, if you fall into the commodity side of the marketplace, you're probably going to be introduced to the GPOs pretty quickly. And then we're going to talk about other GPO services, and then I am going to add a piece about working with GPOs to be successful before and after the contract. And hopefully we'll have a few minutes if you want to ask some questions. I'll answer every question you have except the hard ones. If it's specific to a particular GPO, I really can't answer that. But all right, let's move ahead. The GPO market overview. The current GPO HSCA, Healthcare Supply Chain Association membership, is pretty simple. There's 7 members. And if you look down to the next bullet point, according to the databases that track GPOs, there's approximately 150 to 583 GPOs out there. And then Todd, how can you speak for the GPOs? Well, they're the ones, these are the ones that are more highly involved in the national marketplace that most of the congressional people pay attention to. So that's why we do that. You have to understand that the GPOs, participating in a GPO is voluntarily driven. You do not have to use a GPO as a supplier or a hospital or a member. You don't have to do that. The database that I would always use, and I would always encourage you, if you're trying to look very closely at GPOs and who they represent and what facilities are involved, there's this database called from Definitive Healthcare. It's out on the web. Google it, and they can provide you the access information to access their database. They used to be able to provide information to us with just getting on their website and kind of creeping around and find out information, but they've gotten a little bit more tighter with their information. But what they identify as about 150 GPOs out there, 80 which are regional GPOs, about 70 of them are national GPOs. And then the regional GPOs many times will participate and work with a regional or a national GPO simply because of the systems they have and the information they have available to them as well. Then there's another source of information. It's called the Healthcare Value Chain. This is a book written by Professor Lawton Burns of the Wharton School of Business. He is the guru of healthcare supply chain management. They will identify 583 GPOs in the industry, and that comes from IBS worldwide. Don't know, for example, who they count as GPOs. We've called them and asked them many times, who's in your database? They won't tell you that, but they'll tell you that about 80% of them, of the 583, are healthcare GPOs. So my goal from the standpoint of the databases is, number one, if you want to consult the database and learn more about GPOs and who they participate with and how the affiliations are all pulled together, you look at the Definitive Healthcare database. And then there's many other competitors out there. There's a number of GPOs. If you talk about 70 national GPOs, Well, I know of PDF, I know of Premier, I know of the VA and the Department of Defense, MHA, Navigator, and a few of those. But there's many other out there that, frankly, I couldn't tell you. There is no national registry of GPOs. But by and large, the GPOs that the association represents make up the majority of the business out there. The key takeaways from my perspective standpoint is do your homework if you're going to get in the GPO business. Get the definitive healthcare database and really pay attention to it and go through and find out who the various hospitals or affiliates participate with. It's extremely important to understand that. Now let's look at the provider arena. You have to understand from the provider standpoint, it is completely voluntary. If a provider doesn't feel that they're getting the value they need from a GPO and the products and services they have, they may say, I'm going to look elsewhere. And they do that. They may say, I like everything except these categories of contracts. And guess what they do? This is a takeaway. They'll do their own thing. They'll contract to do their own contract, and many times they'll work with the GPO to include it in the portfolio specific to them simply because the GPOs have great databases and great catalogs. From a surgery or from a hospital perspective, you know, the range goes from 6,500 to 7,500 hospitals out there. Now, if you look at GPO databases, and I looked at them all the time, from a hospital standpoint, if you were to add up the number of hospitals that are represented by the 3 largest GPOs, there'd be about 35,000 hospitals. And you'll say, well, wait a second. There's only 7,000, you said, Todd. Well, hospitals participate in more than one GPO. The range could be anywhere from 1 to 4, and if you get into some of the regional stuff, it could be even more than that. So there's a lot that's going on in the marketplace, and what the point of this is, there's a fair amount of flexibility. If you're not able to work with the national GPO, there is flexibility to work with the regional GPOs or the affiliates. And then when you look at the non-acute care market, we would use the number of 68,000 non-acute care providers. The reason why we use that number is that I could document it, and I could document it through definitive healthcare. There are many, many more. We think there's a couple hundred thousands of non-acute care practices out there, from physician clinics, surgery centers, nursing homes, et cetera. So they're out there. There's lots of flexibility. And the takeaway is there's a lot of opportunity to promote product. But it's just not easy as go get in a contract with a Vizient or a Premier or an HCA. You got to do some homework, and you got to work the angles quite effectively. Now, what's the value of working with a GPO from the provider standpoint? We develop contracts for them. And one of the key components from that standpoint is the supplier has access to multiple providers, but the portfolio comes together with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers to create the number of products and services that are available to the providers. It's completely member-driven. If you believe that GPOs would just sit in a dark room and make decisions about what's being used, from a contracting standpoint, it doesn't happen that way. Every GPO has member advisory councils specific to the various disciplines they're working with. I worked in my earlier days with many pharmacy councils, and those councils would range from, and they're approximately 12 to 15 people, ranging from the big systems, which I call the super tankers, all the way to some of the regional or rural hospitals that have a different perspective as well. Those individuals were tasked with reviewing information and providing you a tremendous amount of input about what hits your contract, your final contract, and your contract portfolio. So it's very member-driven, and as you can see, there's a lot of services that GPOs contract for. In fact, the majority of services that are now being contracted for, besides the standard med-surg, pharmacy, laboratory, dietary, has come from input from the membership that said, hey, we need this product, we need these types of services for our facilities. And in fact, I would venture to guess the previous discussion about AI, I'll bet you the GPOs are now being asked about, what do you know about AI? What can you help us with? From the standpoint of where's the best approach we should use, or should we do anything with the GPO or do it on our own? So those are the kind of things and the kind of requests that come into GPOs relative to what should we do and what should we do next. Just one bullet point, the fourth one source for healthcare products and services, but not all. And this is where I look at this audience and this particular show is there's a lot of technology, and a lot of new services, and a lot of new products, and frankly technology, AI. If your product is so new and unique, you have to ask the question, do I need a GPO? Oh, well, it'll promote itself. GPOs have a big, broad spectrum of where their information goes to, so they may be helpful, but at the same time, do you need to participate with a GPO if your product is so unique and so new and technologically advanced? That's a question that has to be asked. GPOs do a lot of homework in vetting the suppliers. And I'll use an example of COVID, because GPOs were actively engaged in the COVID arena. One particular GPO during COVID vetted over 1,000 suppliers that said, hey, we've got the cat's meow, we have the best product in these particular areas, we're all FDA approved. And of those over 1,000 suppliers, 12 of them actually met the criteria of being FDA approved and would meet the criteria that facilities are looking for. And so they do a very thorough and robust job of vetting suppliers as well. They support emergency and public health efforts, all the way from emergency, and I can just name a few: hurricanes, tornadoes, rainstorms, shootings, COVID. They've been actively involved, in fact, in a hurricane, because you do have a 3 or 4 day notice that something's going to happen. They are on the phones with their provider members saying, you're in the pathway of this hurricane. Now, if you're not going to have to evacuate your hospital, what can we get you now? And then as soon as the coast is clear, what do we need to have staged for you from the standpoint of patient care? And they would work with distributors and wholesalers to make sure they had the products at hand. New technologies, we've talked a little bit about that, but that's a big deal. The members of GPOs tell the GPOs what a new technology is. Many times when we had new technology, and when I was the CEO, the contract managers would come to me and say, Todd, what do we do? And if we were uncertain, we would take it to some of our big facilities to tell us, is it truly a new technology or not? Intermountain Healthcare helped us with that a lot of times. OSF Healthcare of Peoria, Illinois has helped us. Virginia Mason helped us. So your members tell you what's new technology. There's a key there. If you have something that's unique and you're not sure where it needs to go from a GPO perspective, work their membership. Have some discussions with those guys. They can be very helpful in giving you direction, and many times be a voice when it comes to working with the GPO. Robust data systems. The systems are second to none. They're really great systems. They've been developed over the years and really have a tremendous amount of usable and actionable data, and I'll talk about that a little bit further on. What does the GPO do for suppliers? A powerful conduit for access to providers, not only from the standpoint of a catalog, but GPOs do support their contract suppliers. They want you to be successful, because if you're successful, it means success for them as well. So they really want to work with the suppliers to make sure that they are successful. They're a great source of quality product usage and clinical information. You can work with them to have access to providers to tell you how they're using your product. You know, what are the challenges? What are the drawbacks? Or where are the hot spots where you may be able to promote it? And then for an opportunity of growth. There's fewer contracts. You know, one of the biggest selling point is fewer contracts from the standpoint of developing the portfolio. But you have to understand, though, too, it used to be there was one contract, one broad contract for everybody in the portfolio. Now the bigger facilities have said, that's great, but, well, yeah, the answer is, but what? Well, I can drive bigger volumes. I can probably even drive higher commitment levels. So what are you going to do for me? So GPOs have had to expand their contracting, for example, a particular contract that would have a base level, and then it would have a level specific for volume, because they're a bigger facility that can do more. And then there would be one for commitment, maybe a 90% commitment for the number of products that they would use, or both of those. And you know, again, the big super tankers, the Intermountain Healthcares of the world, the Mayo Clinics of the world would say, you know, I should get a better deal simply because I'm big and I can make a lot of commitment as well. So that's how those contracts work. I've talked about data systems, industry support and innovation. They want to hear from you. Innovation is a competitive component of the GPO arena. They would like to bring out the new technologies first. So sit down with them. If you've got something new and improved, sit down with them, have a discussion. Many of them will hold new technology seminars. Get on the phone or communicate with the GPO to say, when is your new technology seminar? Let me show you what we have. And we would like to be included in this, because then they'll bring their members in, and their members will provide them a tremendous amount of feedback relative to the new products and technology. And then membership and provider access. Shows like this, GPOs have great big shows in great big cities to do these kind of things, where they have big convention centers. And they will bring 8 to 10,000 members there to have their suppliers and the membership to come meet with the suppliers as well. You can get a lot of information, what works and what doesn't work, and it's an opportunity to promote your product even more and figure out what providers are thinking and more. So just a few additional topics. When a GPO does an evaluation and does a vetting of manufacturers, they want to know a lot of stuff, and it's gotten a whole lot more complex after COVID. And you can see these things that they pay attention to, and of course, price is always out there. But now what they're looking for, because no one wants to go through COVID again, that was not fun for anybody. And what they are looking for is they are mapping the entire supply chain. They want to know where you're getting your active pharmaceutical ingredients, your raw materials, your excipients, if you will, if it's pharmaceutical. Where is it packaged? Where is it manufactured? Where is it packaged? Where is it stored? Where's the distribution? And, oh, by the way, what's your redundancy in the system? They're looking for that, and one of the key reasons why they're looking for that information is because their members are asking for it. They know that they don't want to run into that situation again where it's COVID and they have a problem sourcing materials. So that's one of the key things. You're going to get asked lots of questions, be able to answer that or provide that information as needed, because that's very important. And I know specifically that decisions were made relative to a contract based upon the fact that a member or a provider had, or a supplier had, a duplicative source of supply. They're paying attention to that very closely. Supply chain management, we always say that GPOs have a complete line of sight on the supply chain. GPOs are able to and have told the FDA, based upon supplier data that comes in through wholesalers, distributors, et cetera, hey, FDA, are you aware of that there are going to be shortages in these particular product categories in the very near future? You better be paying attention to that. And the FDA would say, we didn't know that. So the GPOs have provided tremendous amounts of information to the FDA. And during COVID, the treatment protocols that were utilized for COVID patients, you notice we got close with ventilators and a lot of the medications used for treating patients, propofol, the medication that would put them out during the use of a ventilator, never ran out of it. GPOs developed the algorithms to say, if you expect this many COVID patients, this is what you need from a ventilator standpoint, this is what you need from the product standpoints, the drugs and medication standpoint. It got close, but they never ran out. And the FDA utilized their protocols, FEMA utilized their protocols as well. We can talk about administrative fees. Yes, GPOs charge administrative fees. That's one of the key things that I get asked about all the time. Yes, it is. GPOs provide a valuable service. And the service is hopefully not only to the healthcare provider, but to the supplier, relative to promoting your product and having good access to information. And as something comes up, that information can be distributed to all the membership about your product as well. So there's a tremendous amount of value that goes into that. Now, GPOs follow a very tremendous or a very rigorous program relative to admin fees. They have to make sure that every customer of theirs, every provider, when they sign their contract, they know that there's an admin fee being charged. That admin fee has to be disclosed per contract on the contract data sheet or something like that that says we are collecting an admin fee of 3% or less if it's less than, or 3% or less, or if it's above 3%, specifically what it is above it. And then on an annual basis, they have to report to the provider, specifically per contract, how much volume and how much admin fee was collected. And oh, by the way, provider, when you get that information, you have to include that in your Medicare cost reports. And then finally, if the Secretary of HHS wants the GPO's data, they can request it and they will get it. So it's something that GPOs pay very close attention to and make sure they do it the right way. And then transparency, healthcare group purchasing initiative, that is, and sometimes there are issues relative to group purchasing organizations where somebody gets ticked off at a GPO and says we weren't treated fairly. There's an ethics and transparency initiative available. Former Congressman Phil English of the HGPII, take your phone call, and they'll work to try to mitigate whatever the issue is. It's kind of a little unfortunate that many times the phone calls wouldn't go to them, but they would come to me. I was the CEO of Amerinet, and I got a lot of calls because I was known as one of the good guys. I'd listen. And then I'd pick up the phone, and I'd call the CEO of the particular GPO and say, okay, let's figure out what's going on. How do we answer this question so it's fair? So there's a pathway from the standpoint of making sure that you do things the right way. That's why when you do the contracting, it's a very thorough and complex process. GPOs have had to, because of the Ethics and Transparency Initiative, have a very concrete and thorough contracting process. They're going to look at everything. You need to fill everything out. If you don't understand it, ask your attorney or ask them, but complete the RFP. All right, finally, how to engage a GPO, and I've got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to buzz through this and hopefully we can get a few questions. Get to know your GPOs. Get to know what they do. There's a website out there for each one of them that talks about new suppliers. Engage with them early. And if you have questions, ask questions. If you can't get through to them, have you ever heard of the Federation of American Health Facilities, their annual meeting? Go to that. GPOs are there. It's a reverse trade show. And you can talk with the appropriate people that you want to talk to. Work with the membership. You know, they have advisory committees. They're not going to tell you who they are, but you can probably get an idea that I'll bet you if you're working with Vizient, you're probably going to understand that Intermountain Healthcare is probably on the advisory committee or someone like that. And have a discussion with them and ask the question, how can you help me? How can we get this reviewed? Because the GPOs are extremely busy, get a lot of requests. Connect early with the sourcing teams. Make sure that you, when you complete and finalize your RFP, that it's powerful, it's thorough, and you have a great value proposition. That's what you want to do. Many times you'd have an RFP proposal come in and you'd never heard of the company before. And you go, who are these guys? What do they have? So you do as best you could in the middle of an RFP process, and sometimes you just didn't have enough time to vet them. So spend the time in advance. If you think you're going to need a GPO, get engaged. Begin those dialogues so they know who you are and that you have product coming. And then proactively address dynamics with the team. And then if you have new products and services, talk to them in advance. Tell them what's coming. See if there's anything that competes with that product in the industry, or is it something that could be slotted right into the contract? That's one of those things where there's a responsibility of the supplier to really engage with the GPO. Many times they don't know you're out there. Or if they do, it's because a member has said, and we had this before, hey, Todd, you guys need to put this on contract because it's very unique to me and I need this. And we would invoke our new technology clause and add something to the contract. So it's very important for you to engage with the GPOs. Finally, after contract, adhere to the terms and conditions. If you really want to piss off a GPO, don't adhere to the terms and conditions. If there's an issue, or if you use distribution, quickly and accurately load that stuff. If you want to really tick off a member, don't have that price come in the right way, because they're going to tell you right away. They'll look at the contract portfolio that a GPO provided them, and then they'll look at what comes in on the invoice, and they'll say it's wrong. Got to fix those things very quickly. So quickly and accurately take care of that. Maintain open and responsive communications. Attend the national and regional GPO meetings. They have a number of meetings that are out there that will give you direct access to the contract managers. And that's pretty darn important. And then explore additional opportunities beyond contracting. Many times we would have our various committees, and if you had a product that would fit in one of these committees, you were asked to come and talk about your product in one of these committees so they understood it more. And it helped the GPO as well as the members that made the decision. All right, what do we do with this organization? It makes sense or not? And that's very important to engage with the GPOs. And finally, as I said, you have to determine, it's flashing, I have 47 seconds, if a GPO is right for you. What's your product like? Is it so unique you don't need a GPO, but you may need the access they have to the customers that they serve? Or is it going to be a commodity? Then you may be ought to talk with the GPO. So I hope this has been helpful to give you an idea of what's going on from a GPO perspective. And now I've got 24 seconds if someone has one question they would like to ask me, or you can corral me when this is done. And if you want, Kelvin's got my email address. I'm not in the consulting business, but I've been in this business so long, I'll answer questions you have. I'll give you some advice if you would like. You understand it's from an old guy that's retired. But I've been in this industry for 34 years, so I have a pretty good idea what happens. So hopefully that was beneficial for you, answered some of the questions you may have, and at least gave you an idea relative to how to engage with the GPO. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.